How did we start running behind suddenly? That's weird. Okay. Not much video pre-show today, folks. Sorry about that. Are you ready, Allison?
I am ready.
Let's do this. Here we go. Daily Tech News Show is powered by its audience, not outside organizations. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, August 1st, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today from NosillaCast at podfeet.com, Ms. Allison Sheridan. Welcome back to Daily Tech News Show. How you been?
Hey, Tom, I've been fantastic. Really good this week.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
Thank you. Steve and I just became grandparents.
I know. I wasn't sure if you wanted to out yourself about that or not. But
oh, no, I'm not excited at all. You probably don't want to bring that up.
No. You haven't been sending me baby pictures or anything. So
No.
And hats off. Was it your daughter?
Yes.
Okay, or your daughter. I wasn't sure if it was your daughter or daughter-in-law, but I wanted to make sure I got it right. She tracked it on her Apple Watch?
Yes, she did. Lindsay is a good little geek, and she right when they told her she was allowed to push, she said, "Wait!" and she grabbed her Apple Watch and set a workout to other because for some reason squirting out a 9-pound baby
was not a default option.
Yeah. No. And in case anybody's wondering, what did I say it was 812 calories?
I think, yeah, 812 out of the 1220 or so that she had for the day.
Right, and that was in 3 hours and 10 minutes and 46 seconds to push it out. So
wow,
we now have a metric.
Huge congratulations. Let's talk later in the show about Uber becoming a mapping company, sort of, but we'll start with our top stories. Chinese ride-hailing service DiDi Xuxing has agreed to merge. Technically, they're sort of acquiring, but the technical business name is a merger with Uber's China business. So Uber had a wholly owned subsidiary. It was a separate company that ran in China that Uber owned. Uber is going to sell that business to DiDi, subject to government approval, of course. DiDi Xuxing will receive the ability to use Uber's brand name, the data they have in the business itself within China, and Uber, in return, receives 5.89% of the combined company with 17.7% preferred equity interest on the economic benefits. So you'll see it usually referred to as 17% or around 20% of the company. Uber CEO Travis Kalanick will join DiDi Xuxing's board of directors, although he will have a non-voting board seat. And DiDi founder Cheng Wei will join Uber's board, also with a non-voting board seat. DiDi Xuxing itself was the result of a merger. If you remember, DiDi Dash and DiDi Kuaidi merged. That company became DiDi Kuaidi, which then changed its name to DiDi Xuxing. And they invested about $100 million in Lyft earlier. Remember that? $350 million in Grab and $30 million in Ola. So they were going to, and they've actually started already with Lyft and I believe with Grab to roll out ride sharing in the apps. So if you have a Lyft app, you could grab a DiDi in China or vice versa. Lyft told Recode, over the next few weeks, we will evaluate our partnership with DiDi.
So DiDi Xuxing is the same company that Apple invested a trunk load of money in, right?
Yeah, about $1 billion. They invested $1 billion in it, and I'm not sure that gives them a significant stake, but they certainly did it in order to learn about the ride business and also to build some bridges in China.
So Uber's money is touching Apple's money in some way. That's probably the closest.
I guess that's a fair way to
put
it.
Apple own a little bit of Lyft. That's really getting confusing.
Yeah, no, Apple. So it's investing money. Yeah, if you want to try to say, well, who owns who now? You're starting to slice the apple really thin.
It's a mutual fund.
Like that.
Oh, that's cute.
But Uber is selling their part to DiDi. DiDi doesn't own any part of Uber, so the investment Apple has in DiDi doesn't actually put them in charge of anything Uber related.
But Uber owns part of DiDi.
Uber now
DiDi doesn't own part of Uber, but Uber owns part of DiDi, and Apple owns part of DiDi.
Yeah, so they're co-owners.
Yeah.
Although it's all minority shares, so nobody has a controlling interest. And suddenly, I guess, the point you raised that could be interesting is all of this data on Uber China would go over to DiDi, and Apple theoretically could get access to that. But Uber's data in China is way smaller than Uber's data in other parts of the world. DiDi has like 84% of the marketplace over there.
Okay. It's still getting awfully interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think this is a really significant step by Uber to say, well, we tried. We obviously don't want to abandon the Chinese market, so we're going to get a stake, but we're going to let somebody else handle this. And suddenly the DiDi, Lyft, Ola, Grab federation that looked to be the best competitor to Uber worldwide is starting to crack a little bit.
So does this mean that China doesn't have much in the world of antitrust? Because it sort of feels like DiDi just gobbled up everything.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't jump to that conclusion that they have nothing in the way of antitrust, but it certainly is an entirely different landscape as to what constitutes antitrust, and when they allow monopolies and when they don't is very different for sure. I do wonder though if DiDi would run afoul of any kind of antitrust sort of situation with that level of market share. We'll see if they have any problems getting this acquisition, this merger approved.
Right, because it isn't approved yet. I am always intrigued when people talk about antitrust with respect to Microsoft or Apple or whatever. It turns out in the United States, at least, it's usually if you grow into a monopoly, that's not bad. But if you acquire into a monopoly, that's where they have to have some problems. And then once you are a monopoly, your monopolistic behavior can be judged.
Yeah, and that's where Europe is fairly similar to the U.S. right up to that last point, where Europe will seem to more readily judge that you have abused your dominant market position than U.S. officials will.
Right. Go Europe. All right. Well,
if
Amazon,
that's the way you feel, yeah.
Amazon was awarded a patent on July 19th for noise-canceling headphones that can listen for a particular sound, like sirens or your name, and stop the noise-canceling function or mute audio so you can hear the outside world. The headphones would use mics embedded in the ear pads that monitor outside noise for trigger sounds. CNET's Justin Yu points out one of the engineers listed on the patent, Benjamin Scott, worked for 3 years on the Alexa information team.
We cannot take no more of it, said Benjamin, and then he left and started working on a different patent. No, I think this is a cool idea, which is the ability to say, okay, I'm going to allow Allison to get my attention if I'm sitting around the house or we're walking around or I'm on the airplane. In fact, actually, I could see this with Eileen. If I'm on the airplane, I could program to say, if Eileen says Tom to me, I want to hear it. But I don't want to hear anything else on this plane.
Was it a specific person saying it or just anybody saying it?
No, it's just anybody saying it. But I'm assuming I only tell Eileen to do it, so it would rarely come up otherwise.
Now, noise-canceling headphones are most useful on airplanes, so what you really want the trigger phrase to be is, would you like a drink?
Right. Because
you want to hear that one, right? I'm not quite sure why this is so exciting, but people seem awfully excited about it.
Yeah, because I am not personally very excited because I don't use noise-canceling headphones. I use noise-reducing headphones, but I don't like to have power to my headphones. I don't like batteries to go out on my headphones. So I just put up with a little less noise canceling because of that. Those of us out there there are huge noise canceling headphones super fans out there. The idea that's certain noise that I do want to hear being allowed through is pretty cool. And the idea that they would take that Alexa technology where it can recognize trigger words and use it is pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah, that could be pretty cool. I know I did try wearing noise-canceling headphones going out for a walk in the neighborhood. It was so freaky. Don't ever do that. I couldn't hear the cars.
Yeah.
It was like everybody was driving one of those gosh darn, what's that car you drive?
Like a hybrid? Yeah, like a Prius or something.
Exactly.
Windows 10 is no longer a free upgrade for users.
What?
Oh, you didn't hear? Yeah, they should have told you that, Allison.
We should have been notified of this, Tom.
Right? What the hell, Microsoft? As of July 29th, as you might have heard, it is no longer a free upgrade unless you use assistive technologies. If you use, say, the magnifier, the text-to-speech narrator, certain keyboard shortcuts, even the on-screen keyboard, you can go to Microsoft.com/accessibility/Windows 10 upgrade to be guided through the free update process. Now, Microsoft told ZDNet, this is a quote, "It is not intended to be a workaround for people who don't use assistive technology." However, it doesn't seem like they're checking anything.
Yeah, are you really blind? So this is kind of interesting as a let's not call it a loophole, but a path for people who need the accessibility features. When Windows 8 came out, it was really an abomination for a lot of the accessibility features, specifically for voice dictation. even to do voice dictation on Windows, you have to train it with your voice. And the training tool that they built into Windows 8 would crash at the end of creating your voice profile. And all of the help files about it were from Windows 7. So there was no way out of it when they first came out with Windows 8. So I'm wondering whether the problems that they had with Windows 8 were like, okay, well, let's let the people who need the accessibility features delay a little bit longer with Windows 10 if they have to.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's one of those things that could easily be ruined for everyone. It could turn into a we can't have nice things situation where they're like, look, we just really wanted an easy way to let people who need this get it. But we'd really rather you not abuse the privilege. So
sure.
And the fact that so many more people were worried about how to not upgrade to Windows 10 makes me think they probably won't have that many people taking advantage of that.
I just can't wait till the backlash. This is going to be so fun. Everybody's going to be all mad. What? It's not free?
What? Mad on the internet? I can't imagine.
That's never happened. Well, U.S. companies can sign up for the new European U.S. Privacy Shield framework starting Monday, August 1st at privacyshield.gov. The framework governs data transfers between the two regions. The Working Party 29 group remains concerned about commercial aspects of the framework and said the first annual review of the program will be a key moment. So this is about the ability for companies in the United States to work with data from the European Union, from people in the European Union, and have some controls to make sure that the U.S. companies are behaving themselves and not scooping up all kinds of private data and giving it to the government.
Yeah, well, it's a two-way. It is in fact a two-way agreement, as I understand it. It says that we want to make sure that when you share data across these borders, that there's a way to reconcile the different ways that privacy and data are treated in these two different regions. However, Allison, you brought up a really good point when we were talking about this before the show. You never hear anyone talk about what does a U.S. user do if they feel that their privacy has been violated in the European Union? It's always about there's an ombudsman now that you go to your local privacy data commission in Europe and you file your complaint and then it's taken to the ombudsman in the U.S. The United States does not have a single overarching data privacy and protection framework. And I think that's part of the reason, if I am reading this right, and anybody who really is, familiar with this Privacy Shield, if you work with it directly, let us know your inside take on this. But from what I have read, essentially, you already have so much better privacy protection in the European Union that there are just very few situations where a U.S. person would go to Europe and find they couldn't get satisfaction. There are plenty of paths for you to complain already in Europe. The problem was because we don't have this single framework in the United States, the Europeans were saying, well, hold on, we need to have something similar to what our people are used to over here in Europe.
So I guess I inferred from what I read that we didn't need, as U.S. citizens, a conduit to another country, the other countries in the European Union, because they would never do that to us.
Well, and that's because our privacy protections are so loose and varied. That it would just never, like the idea of a U.S. company or a U.S. user not being able to find an answer from a Euro, like maybe it'll take a while, but there is already a path.
Okay, there's already a path, but it doesn't say another country in the European Union wouldn't try to do something naughty.
Well, no, obviously, but there's already a system for that. We don't have a monopoly
on that.
And what the Privacy Shield, the reason the Privacy Shield seems to be saying all about the U.S. is the U.S. doesn't really have a system for that. We don't have a system even for us to complain to inside the U.S. You have to go and file a complaint with the U.S. FTC, and the regulations vary based on states. They vary based on the industry. We don't have the equivalent of the national data protection commissions that they have in the EU.
Okay, I got it.
Researchers at the University of Illinois at Chicago have developed a photosynthetic cell that takes in carbon dioxide and then turns it into synthetic fuel, which can be used in vehicles that can burn that fuel or converted into diesel. The process uses nanoscale flakes of tungsten diselenide, or WSE2, a type of TDMC. Now, if those words mean nothing to you, don't worry about it. Here's the part you'll want to know. It's 1,000 times faster and 20 times cheaper than previous noble metal catalysts. So it's getting closer to being something we could use on a wide scale, affordably, in the real world. One of they call them leafs because they're doing photosynthesis. One leaf has two 18 square centimeter photovoltaic cells that harvest the light, and then the tungsten diselenide and an ionic solution catalyst are on one side to create the fuel, and then there's a cobalt oxide and potassium phosphate electrolyte on the anode side that creates water. The study was funded by the National Science Foundation and the U.S. Department of Energy. It is affordable and it works. It just would have to take some time to be ramped up to industrial scale, and that's something they don't mention in the press release about it. But essentially, it is an easier, faster way to do what people have been chasing for a long time, which is turn light into fuel, the way plants do.
Right. Well, it's I know you used a lot of big sciencey words there, Tom. But the biggest thing there is that it's taking carbon dioxide out of the air as well. So a contributor to greenhouse gases that we help create is it allows us to capture that and use the light in order to create a burnable fuel. And that's something that like you said, they've been able to do it, but they've been able to do it only with very expensive materials
and fairly inefficiently too. Yeah.
Right. And I like that the study, the article in UIC.edu, University of Chicago, Illinois, University of Illinois at Chicago, sorry.
Right, two different ones.
That they, it's not Chambana, right?
Right. No, it's not my school. It's a different university building.
But that they made a point of saying the National Science Foundation is who funds stuff like this. So we should keep having the National Science Foundation because it's that kind of money put in this kind of effort that's actually being able to get us together with the U.S. Department of Energy the ability to find a way to this. I mean, this is a pretty holy grail thing that they've come up with.
And I have a lot of friends who have believed for a long time that, look, yes, we know carbon dioxide is a problem, but I feel like we'll come up with a solution for it. And this could be part of that solution, which is to say, great, yeah, you're creating a fuel that burns releases carbon dioxide into the air, but then you can take that carbon dioxide back and turn it into more fuel. And the question, there's loads of questions about that, which is, does it actually still increase over time, and how much does it increase CO2 over time, and how effective will it be, how efficient will it be, how costly will it be? Those are all things that need to be answered.
Right. But awesome stuff. Well, a new study released by Ethan Mollick at the University of Pennsylvania looks at the effect of crowdfunding site Kickstarter on the creative economy. The study was not funded by Kickstarter, but looked at data from Kickstarter projects and surveys of users. This is really cool. The study found crowdfunding resulted in the creation of 29,600 full-time jobs, employment of 283,000 part-time collaborators, and generated $5.3 billion in economic impact. The study also showed that artistic projects generally are one-off projects, but that product-focused projects often result in the creation of a new organization, except in the games category. Those resulted in 8,800 new companies formed. Overall, the study showed that successfully funded projects generate average outside funding of $2.46 in revenue for each crowdfunded dollar, although this fluctuates wildly from more than $16 per dollar for food-based projects to less than $1 for comics. I love this. I think this is an awesome study.
It's a great study for stats nerds, especially if you're a stats nerd that is interested in crowdfunding. I think that number for food is crazy. And I'm fascinated with the idea that, hey, going onto Kickstarter and asking people to crowdfund something actually leads to more investors. I love that particular quirk in the human psychology. We think, well, no, if you go and you ask other people for money, then other people aren't going to want to give you money because you already got money. But it's that psychological thing of, if you start to get money, people feel like, oh, well, that must be a good bet, so I'm going to back that as well, and I want to find a way to do that. It's the restaurant phenomenon, right? If you go by a restaurant and there's nobody in there eating, you're less likely to go in and eat because you're like, well, nobody thinks it's good. Why should I go in there?
Exactly. Well, the food one is probably, that stat's probably completely swung by that potato salad guy, right? Remember the first guy to do it?
You think they should have? Well, I don't know. I did not look to find out if they corrected for potato salad guy. That would be an interesting find if they're like, oh, it's $16 per dollar. But I don't think he got, no, it's $16 for outside investment. I don't know if he got outside investment in his potato salad.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay, good point. Good point.
Could have thrown that all off. You're right.
It's a clean statistic. But I think about this kind of statistic. I'd like to know more things that have happened on the internet and their impact like this. Like the one one I've always wanted to know is how much landfill was saved because of eBay. You know, when everybody stopped taking the junk out of the garage and throwing it in the landfill, instead just said, oh, I wonder if anybody wants this laser disc, and they got $16 for selling it on eBay instead of throwing it away.
Yeah, because, I mean, that stuff happened before eBay, but it was way less efficient. It was more difficult. And somebody who was like, oh, I'm not going to have a garage sale, I'm not going to go to a flea market, would be like, well, but I will package this up and send it in the mail. And there are still people who wouldn't do that, who will throw things away. So, and that makes me think there's an opportunity, right? Like and there are a few startups that kind of try to do that for you, where like, you just sell it, we'll come and pack it and ship it. They just don't seem to catch on because they don't make you enough money to make it worth it.
Yeah. I've had friends who will say, hey, I'll give you 20% if you do all the selling part. No.
Yeah. So you're the equivalent of that startup in that.
Yeah, that's a bad deal. It's like 38 cents an hour is what you be making doing it.
Yeah. Well, that is it for the top stories. Thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. We had great submissions today from Abatuela Condolce, Steve I.O., MacWinUXIT, Strike It Rich, one who I got to see in person this week at CreateCon. That was a blast. Fritz X007, Consist at SP Sheridan, and more. Get in there and vote, folks. dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. That is a look at our headlines. We don't call them the headlines anymore. It's top stories. It's the first time I've screwed that up since we launched Daily Tech Headlines. All right. Uber news. Sources telling Financial Times. So this is based in part on sources, but in part they've also said some things in public that back this up. The part that's on sources is that Uber plans to spend $500 million on a global mapping project. But we already know they're doing mapping projects, so it's not a big leap to think that they would consolidate that and invest some more money in it. We know that the company would like to create its own mapping system. Google Maps has been raising the price that it charges for Google Maps. Uber already has their own customizations that they integrate into the Uber map that is in the Uber app. Uber has cars mapping in the United States and Mexico already. They hope to start operating vehicles in other countries soon. They've said that publicly as well. And you can think of things that would be beneficial for Uber if they had their own maps. Obviously, they're working on self-driving cars, so that's part of it. But also Uber-specific things, which would be beneficial for DiDi or Lyft or anybody else, which is a part of the map that says, hey, I'm on this side of the building, or I'm actually at this part of the street that has a bus stop, or, you know, all of those things that don't matter generally in maps, but do matter specifically in ride hailing.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by this because we have so many options for maps now, and you and I've talked about this before. I know you're a crazy Waze user. I'll use Waze if it's like really bad traffic and there are alternatives other than the freeway. And but the looking at the map itself is like having razor blades shoved in my eyes. I can't stand the display. But then I'll go to Apple Maps if I'm driving by myself, because even though the maps, there's some issues with it from time to time, I really like it with the Apple Watch, because the Apple Watch will tap me to tell me, yes, this is where you turn. So you're not going, is this it? Is it, looking down at the maps? On the other hand, I don't like the way you can't zoom in on a path to get kind of or zoom out, I should say, to get situational awareness. So then I'll flip over to Google Maps and do that there. And then the 3D mapping stuff they've done in Google Maps is some, I don't know if you've looked at it lately, but my daughter, when she wanted to tell us where to go at the hospital, she said, it's a little tricky to park. Let me do a screen share with you over iMessage. I'll share screen and I'll show you in 3D maps how to get into the parking structure. And here were the real buildings. I mean, it looked exactly right. So now we've got all these different ways of doing it. We're probably going to end up with a fourth one with Uber, unless they don't provide it to us. What if they only keep it for themselves?
Well, and I think that's probably what's going to happen. Remember, Nokia here was acquired by a consortium of automakers. And the reason is they don't want you to use this as your own map. They want this to be the map that is included in cars, and especially in self-driving cars. And I think that's Uber's ultimate goal, is to say, we're going to need our own positioning system for self-driving cars. We don't want to have to pay someone else for that. We think we can do it better and cheaper internally, especially because of those customizations. And that would be the other reason that I wouldn't expect Uber to just give you a maps-only app. necessarily, but rather include in Uber their own data and their own maps that they can look at and say, hey, guess what? Because I took an Uber from the hotel yesterday in Orlando, and I got out in the corner and I dropped my pin and it gave an address, but I realized, well, I'm actually around the corner in the kind of the valet area for the hotel. That guy's not going to know I'm over there. So I'm going to walk over to the corner and keep an eye out for him. And then even then, he kind of pulled up and then got out of his car and looked for me. And I've definitely, I don't know if you've had it, where either Uber or Lyft, you'll put in an address, you'll get the car, and then they'll immediately call you and say, okay, I see you're at this corner, but which part of the corner are you at? What store are you in front of? Would you mind crossing the street because it's easier to pick up over that side because of one-way streets, et cetera?
I've actually had a little bit of the opposite problem where they want to try to get to me. And I'm like, look, I can walk across really easily. You just stay there. And they're like, no, I'll come and get you. And it's like, yeah, but you got to make like 11 U-turns to get to me. And I can walk right across.
It's better for all of us if I just cross the street.
Yeah. We've definitely had trouble with that. I was also thinking about what if Uber were to put sensors and cameras on all of the cars that are driving for them. I don't know whether that's practical to have that on everybody's, Honda Accord.
Probably
that's their
pretty pricey,
car.
right? But you think that they could probably do some data mining and identify drivers that drive a high amount, especially in areas where they're lower on mapping, and maybe fix those up. And get some more coverage that way. The I guess the downside is if that shows up, you and I are going to be really excited when that shows up and go, oh my gosh, look, you've got the mapping stuff on. That's amazing. Other people, not so much.
Yeah, right. Then you've got a camera looking at you getting in the car, I guess. Yeah, maybe that's a really dumb idea. They shouldn't do that.
No, I think I don't know. It probably just gets too complicated to sort it out. Yeah, I was like, maybe they should just make it an option if you want to have mapping on, but.
No, does every company that's doing a self-driving car have to do their own maps?
No, I mean they can actually rent the maps or buy the data from another company, but at a certain point that gets costly. And I think what Uber's saying is we want to have more control because we're developing the technology, right? Right.
I suppose if you're doing it from scratch, that's the way you'd want to do it. But I haven't heard anything about like who Tesla would be going through, or there was an article, I don't think we're going to talk about it today, but there was a story today about Delphi working on self-driving cars, going to go on a track in Singapore, I think it was, and which was interesting in itself. But I don't know what they're using. What kind of maps is everybody using? Google and Uber's the only one going to do it themselves, or is Volvo doing it?
I don't think everyone will do it themselves, but there's also that idea of like if you can afford to do it yourself, you can also be the one who rents that data out, and suddenly you're in an Amazon Web Services situation where you created a thing to help your product, but you can make a ton of money letting other people take advantage of it.
Right. No, you mentioned Here Maps. Didn't Here Maps just shut down?
No, the Here Maps app may have, but they actually were sold to an auto consortium.
Okay.
So I can't remember off the top of my head which car makers are involved, but those car makers are going to take that and continue to develop it for themselves.
That makes sense in context,
Yeah. Okay. And Uber acquired Bing's mapping team last June. So Microsoft has said, hey, this is not something we're going to be involved in. Uber acquired Descartes, a mapping company that developed the turn-by-turn directions behind the OnStar software. This isn't just Uber trying to do it themselves with the people they had inside. They are going out and making these acquisitions too to bring in the experts. The biggest one is last year, Uber hired Brian McClendon, who previously ran Google Maps and helped create Google Earth.
So they're really playing with the big boys now. I mean, they're not some scrappy little startup. They're the real deal.
No, they are global. And that's what, going back to that first story of the day, selling off their Chinese subdivision or subsidiary to DiDi Xuxing is a big deal. It's basically saying, yeah, you know what, that we are going to seed that market and decide that we'll make the best money in that market by being a minority partner than to try to run it ourselves.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, folks, if you've got thoughts on this, always send them to us, feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Let's get to our pick of the day. Christopher Copping writes, my friend Jacob O'Neill, a man who has great talent in computer design and graphics, over the years has created an educational program free to the public in hopes to educate people on topics they find interesting. I think if you look at some of the work he's done, in particular the workings of the internal combustion engine, you might see this could appeal to some of the listeners of your podcast. And he included some links to animagraphs.com. It's ANIMA, so anime fans don't get thrown off. ANIMAGRAFFS.com. But he has how to walk on the moon, how a solar cell module works, how a car engine works, and more. And he just launched his own Patreon to fund these. They're real detailed and well researched. They look really good.
Maybe if we pronounced it anima graphs instead of anime graphs.
Yeah.
Right.
Anima graphs. Like giraffes, but without an I and an E.
Animation. Anime graph. Okay.
Or just go to the show notes and get the link there. But they're definitely worth a look. They're really cool looking. Thank you, Christopher, for sending them along. You can send your picks to us as well. Feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. This week, I forgot, because I was traveling, to send Nate a promo for DTNS, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to tell you about what's happening in his show, Text Message.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Rather than talking about Pokemon Go this week, we're going to be talking about a London event that we visited that allowed people to pay an entry fee and take advantage of a whole host of perks for the game. It's really quite something and strange. Plus, BBC iPlayer over here is starting to subtitle its live on-demand programming, and it looks like a world first. So we're going to explain how this is achieved. That and more on this week's Text Message, out now at textmessage.co.uk or simply techpodcast.uk. Back to you, Tom.
Check that out, techpodcast.uk. Message.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Before you go on, Tom, I just want to say I was really glad you guys started doing the cross-promotion, because I had just forgotten to keep listening to Text Message. I did for a while, and then, I don't know, it got lower in the list. And I when I heard you, I was like, oh, yeah, why aren't I listening then? Brought it back up. I get to hear Nate all the time. Love it.
Yeah, no, it's great. Marlon from Trinidad wrote in and said, you guys keep suggesting that Pokemon Go is on the decline, yet it still hasn't been released in Central and South America. The athletes in Brazil are fuming about that, by the way. It has not reached most of Asia, including India and China, and we are also waiting here in the Caribbean. It was live here for one day when it launched, and you had to sideload it. In an hour, I saw all the gyms around my work conquered, and then it went away. There's still pent-up demand. It's a fair point, Marlon. When we talk about the decline, we talk about it based on where it has launched. It has reached a peak in the U.S. and is starting to decline. That's not to say it won't then perk up in the places that it launches in the future. But now you can look at the places where it has launched and look at that bell curve and compare them and say, okay, can we expect it, once it does launch in Trinidad, for instance, to hit that same bell curve? Will it be popular for longer, for less often? It's interesting.
Yeah, I heard Nate actually talking about that on Text Message, about the speed at which it picked up in England was just, I'm trying to remember what the numbers were, but it was just mind-boggling how quickly it picked up in England. The fact that they survived Japan, that's amazing.
Yeah, no kidding. It seemed like they were a little worried about that. We also talked about a company that is, once again, one of the companies getting into letting you rent a computer that you use over the internet. You don't own it. You just rent it over the cloud, but you can install software. You can do whatever you want to it. And R wrote in and said, until content is okay with no geolocation, this will never take off. All streaming services will most likely block it, which will make the people willing to pay for it mad. Content will scream that people are using these machines to circumvent geographic restrictions, and thus they must block. So I think he's overstating it, because a lot of people that will buy a cloud streaming computer won't need it for Netflix. They need it for some other business purpose, perhaps. But that is something that will make it less useful if suddenly you're blocked because a bunch of other people were renting this in order to get around geo restrictions. I think the price is probably going to be too high to make it worth somebody who wants to save money on Netflix to pay to rent a computer.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. But thank you, Reed, for that particular observation. You may be right. I may be wrong about that. It all depends on what they charge for it. Thank you, Allison Sheridan, for joining us. That was great.
I had a lot of fun, as always. This is it's great to be here.
You can find Allison at podfeet.com, podfeet.com, and check out Nosilicast and more. You've always got new stuff going on.
Yeah, chit chat across the pond, going strong. We've got one thing we're doing is really fun. Bart Bouchatz every other week is doing a series. I don't remember if I've told you about it before, but he's doing a series he calls Programming by Stealth. So he snuck up on me with doing a little HTML, and then did some CSS, and now we're heavy into JavaScript now. And I'm supplementing what he's teaching me with a service called Codecademy.com. It's a really, really fun way to learn JavaScript, and I forget what the other language is. Might be Python, but I know JavaScript is one of them. And it has little tiny bite-sized lessons where it just says, okay, here's how to make it type your name. And, it starts real slow, and you get little pats on your little pumpkin head. So I'm combining that with the high-level stuff Bart is teaching me, and I'm really getting into it. It was one of my goals when I retired to learn to program in JavaScript or learn to program, and I'm doing it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you can follow your progress on the show then.
Yep. You can hear me sound like an idiot going, I have no idea what you just said, Bart. People like
good.
that.
Makes us feel better about being idiots about it ourselves.
Exactly.
Well, check it out, podfeet.com. Thanks, everybody, for supporting the show. You can find our show at dailytechnewsshow.com. If you'd like to support the show, dailytechnewsshow.com/support gives you all the ways to do it. Today is August 1st. It's Bosses Day. Every August 1st is when I start to get the notes from Patreon that they are funding our show thanks to you. If you would like to be one of those people, go to patreon.com/DTNS. Our analyst level, which is like $1 a show, actually less than $1 a show, lets you into our Slack. We had 9 new people show up in the Slack today, and it's the more people in there, the better. So check it out, patreon.com/DTNS. If you want just the headlines, get dailytechheadlines.com. And don't forget about Weekly Tech Views, a hilarious take about the tech news of the week that is posted on our blog every day, or every Saturday, at dailytechnewsshow.com. And then coming up this afternoon, Sakani's got a new Uber article, Your Private Driver, at dailytechnewsshow.com. Don't forget our email address, feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Our number is 51259-DAILY. We are live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, Alpha Geek Radio and DiamondClub.tv. And our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. See you tomorrow with Lamar Wilson.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Sweet.
Yay, that was fun.
That was
Hey,
fun.
I want in the Slack. Maybe I'm not giving you enough money yet.
Oh, no, you can be. You're a contributor. You should have been invited in anyway.
I may just not be smart enough to do Slack yet. That's one of the reasons I want
Are
in.
you
is
in
to
any
see the
other
reason
Slack
why.
channels?
I am.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well,
I'm not
then-
good at Slack yet.
You're fine. You're fine. Let me.
contribute.
I'll re-invite you. It'll tell me if I.
Maybe would it have come through email? I'm bad at invites.
Yeah, it would come in. It would come through email. Exactly. I will
Thanks.
send it to your pod feet.
Good. Perfect. I want an excuse to use it.
Yeah, and Peter Wells gets in there quite a bit.
Good.
I'm in there all the time, and the more of us that show up in there, the happier
People are.
I think they are. All right, see if that worked.
No Francois tomorrow.
What do we got for titles there, Roger? Oh, Roger can't hear. Roger.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now we can. Yep.
All right. I'm trying something about leaving the screencast up, sharing up, so I don't have to, because I think that's what's screwing up my mic.
Really?
Oh.
So let me see if I
That's kinda
stop
weird.
it and my audio still works.
All right.
You still hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I'll try that.
All right.
All right. So what we got is who's your DiDi now, Uber? Although I will add in Chinese, at least in Mandarin, DiDi means older brother.
Oh, okay.
Noise canceling safe word. Putting Uber on the map. Here there be Ubers. Uber D. Uber D.
Uberty.
When Captain America throws his privacy shield. It sounds kind of lewd for some reason. I don't know why. A lift in Apple's shoes. Uber Maps, we bake our own. A lot of this was centered on Uber.
Yeah, well, that's good. That
What
was our
the
main topic.
subject?
Uber's Blitzkrieg map.
Mm.
Uber gives new meaning to cartography. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze for a minute.
Okay. Who's your DD now? Uber is the one I like the best so far.
Yeah, it's the one that goes.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, not older brother. That's good. DiDi's younger brother. But it's probably not the way it's pronounced. Might be.
Who's
No
your
against
daddy?
links. Safe word. 5 cartographers go into a bar.
Do you have a favorite, Allison?
I don't. I like the sound of the one you were just talking about, but I don't know what it means.
Like, who's your daddy?
Okay. I
Who's
liked
your
it.
DiDi? Because
DiDi
DiDi now owns Uber.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that.
DiDi. Younger brother means younger brother.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
That
Go
kind of
means older.
takes away. I liked it when it meant older brother because then it could kind of mean that too. But well.
I'm sure it's a homonym. Probably means something else.
So I should be able to see.
Let's see what this.
Well, that's what I'm going to go with then. And it's in.
Okay, I think
What are you doing there, Allison?
I'm trying to get into Slack. I successfully did it on the web, but not. I don't understand Slack. Apple Podcaster. So it didn't add it to my.
Oh yeah.
List
So
in the app,
the
then.
the key metaphor that you have to keep in mind is Slack does not have cloud login. For security's sake, you always have to log in whatever instance of Slack you're doing. So so you have to, if you have the client, you have to add the channel and then log into it.
Okay, and you have to. The trick is having to know the name of the teams.
Correct.
Yeah.
That still throws me for a loop, which is why I put everything in keychain.
But they do easy login now, where if you've already registered on the web and you go to the client and you add a channel, it'll say, "Would you like easy login?" And then it will just send an email to the email address associated with that account, which you can click on, and it will automatically log you into the client.
Okay, I was afraid to hit that, and I was using my password manager, so.
That just makes it take longer, but it's more
Consistent. I know what it's doing at least. Okay, there I am.
Oh yeah, you've already joined General. I see. Yay, and you're back in.
Twice.
Awesome.
Do I have to join all of the channels? No.
You don't have to. No, if you want to chat in them, you'll have to click on them and say, "Yes, I want to join that channel."
Oh.
You can decide which ones you want.
I only see general and random.
Yeah, there's
So
also, that's the one thing I don't know how to find is where you can find a list of all the channels that are available.
Oh, so there are other channels than those too.
Yeah, there's general and random by default. Then there's one called Headline Submit. There's one called Spoilers because people were like, "Don't talk about movie spoilers here," so they created a channel. There's one called Testing Ground, one called In Case You Missed It.
It's gotta be in here
General
somewhere.
and random are the two most frequently used channels, though. Oh, click on the word channel, and then it will. Oh, yeah, there we go. Thank you. That worked. Beatmaster. Click on the word channel, and it brings up all the available channels.
Preview. There it is. Okay.
And people in Slack are already welcoming you. That's awesome.
Yay. So it's like Snapchat. You got to know a guy to tell you how to use this.
It's not quite as obtuse, in my opinion, but yeah, it does help.
I hope they move everything around a lot so it gets harder to follow too.
No, that's the one thing Slack is really good about is onboarding you. The first time you come on, I don't know if you had that Slack bot conversation. It was like, "Hey, welcome to Slack. Here's how you do it."
Like that. And I watched a long video. Don McAllister did a great screencast online about it. So.
Of course he did. He's the king of screencasts.
He really is. That reminds me, I'm doing one on Photomagico, and I better go work on that instead of screwing around here.
Oh, okay.
I promised myself I would hang up immediately because I had to go work, but then I was having fun.
Well, thanks for
playing
being on, Allison. It was great.
It was a lot of fun. All right. Thanks, Roger.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Just need to upload. Make sure this is right.
So we're still. Oh, I forgot to mention that. That's a minor point. Monopolies.
What'd you say, Roger?
Oh no, I just had I was going to say something about the comment in the beginning of the show between monopolies in Europe and in the U.S. And I was going to say or add that traditionally in the U.S. a monopoly has only been looked at if there's verifiable proof that there has been some damage to the consumer because of it.
Well, that's true of
in
Europe
Europe,
as well.
it's always been more of a monopolies aren't good in general, and so they tend to.
The rule in Europe is pretty much the same. It's that you have to show that they have been abusing their dominant position, and in a way that adversely harms the consumer. I think what you're right about is for sure that the attitude is that, monopolies usually aren't very good for the consumer, and so they more often find them to have abused that position.
Well, it's more of the attitudes of the enforcement agencies, where the FTC will say, all right, someone will bring forward, hey, I've been harmed by this company,
and
as opposed to where in the EU they look at it, it's like, you're a monopoly, let's see if people have been harmed by it.
Well, no, I mean they wait to respond to complaints too. In the EU, I mean the Google antitrust was a complaint brought by someone, but you, again, totally right that the FTC, when you bring a complaint, goes, well, okay, maybe, well, let's take a look into it. Whereas the EU's attitude, and granted, this is not entirely, like a logical analysis, but the EU's attitude seems to be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, monopolies usually do abuse things, so let's find out how they're abusing it. It's a different set of assumptions going in. I fall short of saying it's a burden of proof difference, but there definitely seems to be more in Europe, more of a, well, you have a 90% market share, so these complaints are probably true, whereas the FTC is a little more like, well, okay, just because they have 90% market share, maybe they're abusing it. And it also depends on the administration, too. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, all of it is political. I mean, and not all of it, I should say, but a good chunk of the motivation behind things tends to be political.
Shane was saying he's fallen behind on uploading the DTNS Vimeo.
I forgot to follow up on him.
Okay.
Crap! I got tied down with this tax stuff. Yeah, I gotta make an account. Talk to him.
You just got to work it into the regular daily stuff, and then it'll shouldn't be a big deal. Oh, BioCal could help too. That would be awesome as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Takes a village to be huge. Trying to balance out the slogans there. All right, I am done. People really liked your episode on Thursday, by the way.
It's good. I think. Wait a minute. Do I still have a login to Vimeo? No. I could log in with Facebook, but do I risk it?
Dare you?
Yeah, I might as well.
Okay, I think that is it. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Back with Lamar Wilson tomorrow. Talk to you then. Take care. Goodbye.